Other Old Testament heroes, like Moses, who brought us the laws on which so many of our basic moral ideas are founded. Can Professor Finkelstein and Neil Silberman find any hard evidence that he at least existed? According to the Bible, famine drove Abraham's descendants away from Canaan to Egypt, where they ended up as slaves in the Nile Delta. After many tribulations, a leader amongst them, a man called Moses, led them out of Egypt. They headed eastwards, back towards Canaan, the promised land. This famous journey forms the basis of the Old Testament books of Exodus and Numbers.
Well, here we have the early...
Neil Silberman has come to discuss the evidence for the Exodus with Donald Redford, one of the world's leading archaeological experts on Egypt's Delta region.
Some kind of food preparation.
We know from the archaeological monuments and the inscriptions that in the 13th century there was tremendous power in the Egyptian empire. How can you explain the possibility of such a large group as described in the Exodus story actually going out of Egypt? Is that possible?
Well, I couldn't explain it if I subscribe to that theory. What you said is quite correct. Egypt, in fact, for 5 centuries, from the 15th century on, Egypt ruled an empire, the largest at that time, which extended 2,000 miles as the crow flies from a little north of Khartoum all the way to near the Euphrates River. And the Egyptian army and occupation forces and its economy were extremely strong. They held all of Canaan, of course. Their sphere of influence extended to the Greek islands and Crete. And there is no indication whatsoever in the records, either archaeological or written, of any major hiatus, such as would have been created by the expulsion of upwards of 2 million people, if we believe the biblical record. That would have made such a hole in the population. It would have brought the economy to a standstill. It would certainly have turned up in the record somewhere. Now,
the Bible also says that after leaving Egypt, Moses and the Israelites wandered for 40 years through the Sinai desert on their way back to Canaan. It was here that Moses received 2 tablets of stone bearing the famous 10 Commandments, which still today include some of our most basic moral norms. This is also where the Israelites apparently agreed to give up the worship of idols for the worship of God, and just the one God, alone. But could such a journey have been at all feasible?
all over the eastern delta and in the Sinai and up in the Negev and further north, there were permanent Egyptian garrisons and garrison points, checkpoints. And we have records, the letters that were sent back and the reports of such police on the comings and goings of wandering peoples. Certainly, there would have been no chance whatsoever for a group of people that large to move freely through the desert and into the Negev. Not a chance at all. Moreover, that would be the height of folly to go south into that inhospitable, barren land with mountains everywhere and little water and less food supply. The story simply doesn't fit in so many ways.
And there's an even bigger problem. Throughout the entire period in which the Bible places the Exodus, Canaan was in fact an Egyptian province, ruled by Egyptian governors. We know this because we have extensive Egyptian records from Canaan and a wealth of archaeological evidence. This is Bet Sha'an in Israel. Beneath these Roman ruins, archaeologists discovered it had been a powerful Egyptian garrison in biblical times.
It signifies Egyptian control over Canaan in the late Bronze Age. If you want to understand the way the Egyptians dominated completely the country and the countryside, you have to come here. There was a strong garrison, there were scribes here, there were soldiers here, there were administrators here, and everything was under the control of the Egyptians, which means that 20 kilometers from here, 30 kilometers from here, if somebody wanted to take some sort of a major economic decision or a major political decision, he needed to come to Bet Sha'an to get the approval of the Egyptians. They were the masters of the countryside.
So it makes no historic sense for Moses to have led the Israelites to Canaan in order to escape the Egyptians. But what about Moses himself? Surely there must be some evidence for this most famous Old Testament hero, perhaps the most famous of all Old Testament figures. Even if there's no evidence of the Exodus, there must surely be some record of a leader as important as him.
The name Moses is a name which is very popular from early periods right down into late periods. So it's a fairly common Egyptian name. That's all that we can say. There is no text in which we can identify this Moses or that Moses as the Moses.
The question of the historicity of Moses is the same as the question of the historicity of Abraham. That is to say, maybe there was a figure, maybe there was a leader. I am not here to undermine the historicity of Moses. I think that it is possible, but I would say it's beyond recovery.